Ever feel like no matter what you do, you're always the one chasing women? Maybe you've been there, where you're staring at your phone, you're rereading the last message from a cool, attractive woman. Things with her, it got off to a good start, but now you're starting to second guess yourself as your thumb hovers over the keypad. Every time you start typing out a response, doubt kicks in before you can hit send, so you delete it and you start over. You're in what I like to call emotional quicksand. You've caught feelings, which is causing you to overthink things. As much as you try to stop yourself, everything you do, it only seems to sink you deeper. And while you haven't completely sunk your chances yet, you are trapped in a doom spiral, what I call the validation loop. This is when you go into Wile E. Coyote mode, constantly scheming ways to prove yourself worthy. And like Wile E. Coyote running after the Roadrunner, this is when most guys start to chase. If this sounds familiar, then what I'm going to say next, it shouldn't come as a surprise. Women don't respect the guys who chase them. They respect the guys they have to chase. Once you start chasing a girl, you're only going to chase her away. It's one of those immutable laws of attraction we all know to be true. But what no one ever considers is the inverse is also true. If you can flip the script, get her to chase you, everything becomes effortless. That's because there's a hidden reset button in female psychology that, when pressed, completely flips the dynamic around. And so, in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that by using 5 psychological loopholes that, once triggered, gets her trying to win you over. And now look, a quick word of warning. These tactics, they're powerful. So if you're just looking to sleep with a woman, it's probably overkill, and there's a good chance that she's probably gonna become clingy afterwards. But if there's a specific woman that you could see something more with, do yourself a favor, grab some paper, grab a pen, because you are gonna wanna take notes. Hey, what's up? I am Rob Judge, and like I said in the intro, today's video is about turning the tables to get a woman chasing you and not vice versa. Now, I think any guy watching this video would agree that chasing a woman, it never works. And if you've watched any other videos on this channel, you probably know that one of my favorite mantras is chasing a girl equals losing a girl. But here's the thing, chasing a girl, it's not a mistake per se. Instead, it's merely a symptom of a bigger mistake, probably the biggest mistake that a guy can make with women, which is looking at a woman like she's the prize, also known as putting a woman up on a pedestal. The moment you elevate a woman and view her like she's the prize, you start performing for her. Whether you're conscious of it or not, all of your behavior, it shifts, and you start trying to win her over. And unfortunately, women can sense this from a mile away. And the moment she does, the moment she realizes that you have her up on that pedestal, she does what any human would do when something comes too easy. She stops valuing it. That's why it's critical to flip the script as soon as you can. Instead of being the guy who's like, oh my God, I hope she likes me, you need to be the guy who's like, I wonder if she's worth my time. And look, I get it. That sounds all nice in theory, but when you're in that emotional quicksand, when that gorgeous girl you can't stop thinking about is sitting across from you, it's very hard, if not impossible, to actually adopt this advice. This is especially true when it's a woman who you think might be a bit out of your league. Now, me personally, I remember how hard this was for me the first time I found myself on a date with a girl like this. Now, this was back in New York. I had just turned 23 years old, and I'd only been actively trying to get better with women for a few months at that point. But as luck would have it, I had approached this smoking hot girl at 3 a.m. It was outside a bar on McDougal Street in Greenwich Village, and I ended up getting her phone number. A few days later, I surprised even myself when I somehow managed to get that girl actually out onto a date. So we met up for sushi, and I could still remember looking at her from across the table and feeling like I was in a cartoon. This was the first time I'd ever been on a date with a legit model. Now, I'm not talking about the girls who say they're models, but they're actually living off a trust fund and occasionally pose for the Friends photography portfolio. I'm talking about a girl who'd been in the Miss USA pageant, who was represented by a legit talent agency, who'd been photographed in magazines that you can go and buy at a newsstand. We're talking that kind of model. If you've ever been out with or even sat close to a girl like this, a girl who is literally a beauty queen, maybe you know what I'm talking about when I say it's kind of cartoonish. It's almost like you're looking at her and she doesn't seem real. Just imagine the girl who had the prettiest eyes you've ever seen, or the girl with the sexiest hair, the best lips, the most incredible figure. Then put that all together into one woman, and that's who I found myself sitting across from. Keep in mind though, like I said before, I was pretty inexperienced at that point, so I was definitely faking it way more than I was making it. Even still, at first, the date actually seemed to be going pretty well. The conversation seemed pretty good, and I felt like I had established a pretty good flirty vibe. But internally, I constantly felt like I needed to be doing something. I was in my head, I was scrambling for the next funny line or the next flirty thing to say. And to come back to the cartoon analogy, I felt like Wile E. Coyote chasing the Roadrunner. And eventually, I ran right off of a cliff. And I can still remember the exact moment it happened too. I made some dumb joke about me moonlighting as an ass model, which did not land at all. It didn't even get one of those polite pity laughs. There was just this awkward silence that I desperately wanted to break. So I frantically racked my brain for something to say as I nervously stammered. Thinking about it now, it's like when Wile E. Coyote runs off a cliff, he realizes it, and then he falls into the canyon. Whatever attraction that I may have had started to plummet after that moment. And as much as I'd like to say that I learned my lesson after that date, it took a few more dates like this, losing a few more exceptionally beautiful women, for me to finally realize that the Wile E. Coyote approach is a losing strategy because it sets the wrong frame. No matter how good you get at banter, no matter how good you get at flirting, when you're chasing a woman, you're always running on thin air. And it's only a matter of time before you plummet into that canyon. When I finally accepted this, I backward engineered the process of getting a woman to chase you. Through a lot of trial and error, I realized that there are 5 distinct steps that flip the script so that a woman starts seeing you as a prize. First and foremost, a woman has to see you as having qualities and characteristics worth chasing. Then she has to see you have boundaries so that she understands that she's going to have to work and invest to win you over. Next, you want to speak to her in a way that's uniquely validating. Fourth, she needs to believe that you're capable of being won over because, let's be honest here, no one chases a person that they have no chance with. So, to do that, you dangle a carrot, and you do that by displaying some vulnerability. Finally, you bring it all together with an experience that will put you on her mind, and more importantly, keep you on her mind so that you become an obsessive thought loop. Now, each one of these steps can stand alone as a technique or a tactic on their own, but when you use them sequentially, it becomes a force multiplier. That's because all 5 steps, they work on psychological principles. Now, most men don't understand or even consider the deep psychology of attraction and seduction. But when you understand how to activate a woman's mind so that you become a recurring thought loop, you can sit back and relax because she'll be the one working to win you over. So if that sounds good, let's get started. Step 1, convey chase qualities. Remember the story I told you earlier? One of the things I didn't understand back then was women don't chase what you do. They chase who you are. A common misconception that guys have with dating, and this is even true of a lot of dating coaches and a lot of dating advice, is this idea that a man needs to do all this stuff to demonstrate his value to a woman, or that he needs to prove that he's worthy. That sort of thinking is completely wrong. A woman doesn't want a guy who's looking for opportunities to be funny or to be charming or confident or charismatic. Instead, she wants a guy who simply is those things. Women are looking for character, not performance. So that begs the $1,000,000 question, right? How do you convey attractive personality traits to a woman you just met if you're not performing, if you're not doing anything? Do you A, look for ways to mention your accomplishments? B, tell personal stories that subtly portray your attractive qualities? C, recognize and praise other people's attractive qualities? Or D, none of the above? Give up? The answer is actually C. Now, most guys get this wrong because they've never heard of a psychological concept called STT, which I'll get to in a minute. But first, I want you to consider the phrase, "It takes one to know one." Now, if you're like me, you've probably heard this phrase used in a negative context, probably back when you were a kid, right? I remember back in the day, this was like the go-to comeback line on the playground. If someone insulted you, called you something like an ass face, whatever, an easy retort was, well, it takes one to know one. The logic being that it takes an ass face to recognize an ass face. Now, another example of this is an adage like, a thief thinks everyone steals. What I'm getting at here is people tend to project their own mindsets and their own behaviors onto others. So a liar assumes everyone's lying, a cheater is always accusing others of cheating, and so on. This is, Psych 101. It's a Psych 101 concept called projection, and it typically carries a negative connotation. However, that's not totally accurate. It's actually only half the story. Projection can also apply to positive qualities. If you've taken a more advanced psychology class, you may have heard this called STT, which stands for Spontaneous Trait Transference. And it occurs when people unconsciously associate the traits you describe in others with you. So if you start talking about how you admire someone's charisma or their confidence, your listener will begin to associate those same traits with you. The reason for this is because of a psychological loophole. Our brains, they're lazy when it comes to processing social information. So when you talk about a quality that you admire in someone else, as a woman listens, her brain doesn't neatly separate the source of an idea from the idea itself. Instead, she unconsciously begins to associate that quality with you. Now, I'm sure you see where I'm going with this, right? To get a woman to see you as ambitious, courageous, intelligent, masculine, or any other attractive characteristic, all you have to do is find a way to recognize and applaud that quality in someone else. And pro tip, it doesn't even have to be a real person. For example, a quality that always played well for me with the ladies was getting a woman to see me as creative. In fact, it's probably the compliment that I've gotten most from women. But think about it. How would a woman that I'd only just met know that I was creative? It's not like I was taking women on dates to writing workshops or painting classes. Most of the women who gave me this compliment never even actually saw me do anything creative or artistic. So how did they come to that conclusion? Well, it's simple. Because I always make sure to applaud someone else's creativity or artistic ability when I'm getting to know a woman. Now, sometimes this is easy, like if we get on a topic like books or movies, right? All I need to do is say a few words about why I admire a writer or why I like an artist, which, of course, is because of their creativity. I really applaud their creativity. But I found I could even do this with fictional characters. Like if a woman says her favorite Disney movie is Beauty and the Beast, right? I might comment, yeah, if I had to marry a Disney princess, Belle would definitely be my pick. But not simply for her looks. What I like about Belle is she has that, introverted, brooding writer energy. I mean, what can I say? I'm a bit of a sucker for pretty ladies with a little bit of a creative flair. See how simple this is? If you can find a way to riff on an attractive quality that you admire in someone else, you will program a woman to see that attractive quality in you. This is an important first step in getting a woman to chase you because, remember what I said earlier? Women don't chase what you do, they chase who you are. Although, keep one thing in mind here. STT, it goes both ways, meaning it works for both positive and negative qualities. So if you start bashing someone's negative qualities, you risk a woman associating those negative qualities with you. Now, obviously, you want to avoid that. But as long as you keep it positive and use this psychological hack strategically, you'll be well on your way to getting a woman to chase you. Step 2, set a chase standard. Now, if you've watched some of my other videos on the channel, you probably know that having standards is something I talk about a lot. That's because it's a core component of being attractive. Think about it. An attractive woman, she always has guys competing for her attention. And when you have options, you develop standards. More options means higher standards, right? Simple supply and demand here. Now, sure, there are women with delusional standards. We've all seen the 300-pound Waffle House war pig who thinks that she's a 10. I get it. But what's more interesting and what gets less attention is when a very attractive woman has suspiciously low standards. Now, these women exist, but they are very rare. And they're rare for a reason. Look, if you haven't encountered one yet, let me save you the suspense. Shortly after you meet a beautiful woman with low standards, one of two things always happens. Either you start to lose respect for her because you're trying to figure out what's wrong with her, or you start to wonder if she's working on commission, if you know what I mean. As the saying goes, if it's too good to be true, she's probably a hooker. Now, the point I'm getting at here is we expect beautiful women to have certain expectations, to have standards. Not only does having standards garner respect, it also presents a challenge. Can you live up to her standards? Can you meet her expectations? And that's how women get most men to chase. It sets up this interesting dynamic, right? Where a woman is the one asking the questions and the man is doing his best to answer those questions to her liking. Now, most guys don't realize it, but this is exactly why women often end up with all the power in the relationship. When you're trying to live up to a woman's standards, what you're essentially chasing is her validation. This tells a woman in no uncertain terms that you're not on her level. And look, it's not simply because she's the one asking questions. It's because she's asking questions from a discerning frame. She's not asking because she's trying to make conversation with a guy. No. She's asking because she's trying to make a decision about that guy. Now, this is why it's important to set a discerning frame. When a woman sets that discerning frame, she's sizing a man up. And this causes most guys to adopt what I call the affinity frame. When you're coming from an affinity frame, you might still be asking questions, but you're asking because you're trying to solidify a connection. You're not asking because you're curious. You're not asking because you're trying to size her up. Instead, you're only asking because you're fishing for commonalities or you're trying to establish rapport. When you push for a connection like this, she knows you're already sold on her. And rather than sizing her up, you're merely trying to fit yourself into her life. Now, if you've ever found yourself in a situation, and let's be honest, we all have at some point, it probably wasn't because you have no standards. Like most men, the problem was your standards are mostly physical. Let's be honest here. What sells most guys on a woman is how good she looks. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, this channel is called Date Hotter Girls, so I'm going to be the last person who's going to shame a guy for wanting a hot girlfriend. Physical attraction is certainly important, but when your only standard is looks, that's where it becomes a problem, because you hand a beautiful woman all of your power as soon as you lay eyes on her. Think back to what I said earlier. What having standards really is having questions. But if all your questions are answered in that first half a second of seeing her, what's left to discover? What's there to discern? You're already sold, so you're not setting that discerning frame. That means you're probably adopting an affinity frame. Instead of keeping an open mind as you genuinely get to know her, you're just trying to get her to like you. And let's not kid ourselves. Attractive women, they can sense this instantly. They know when a guy's already sold on them based purely on looks. And here's the brutal truth. It makes them lose respect for him because it tells her that he doesn't normally attract women who look like her. That's why whenever you're interacting with a woman, you should be aware of the dichotomy between the affinity frame and the discerning frame. Simply knowing that gives you a huge leg up. But here's the thing, even a guy who has standards, even when he sets a discerning frame, he can still mess things up if he doesn't know how to communicate those standards in a subtle, attractive way. Now, if you're heavy-handed about it, where you just come out and you state your standards too directly, you start listing them out, a lot of times you guys list them out on their fingers, I want a woman who's this, I want a woman who's that, it always backfires, right? Instead, the best way to communicate a standard is in a way that creates intrigue rather than puts pressure on her. One way to do that is by embedding a standard into an observation. Instead of saying, I value dedication, you might casually mention how it's such a turn on when you see a woman out running at 5 a.m. in the morning. By saying that, you've actually sort of created a bit of a subtle challenge, right? She'll naturally want to prove why she's dedicated when it comes to her goals. You could also do this in the form of a question. Now, this is something that I explained in depth in my video on the 3 types of chase trigger questions, which you can find right here on YouTube. And in that video, I explained that if one of your standards is, let's say, intelligence, you can embed that in a question by asking, so, what's the last good book you read? Or if you want a woman who's adventurous, you might ask her what's the craziest thing that she's ever done in a foreign country. When you're coming from this discerning frame and you ask a woman a question, it gets her to qualify herself to you. When she answers, she's essentially trying to live up to your standards, which conditions her to chase you. In psychology, this is called operant conditioning, and it explains why habits, preferences, and social behavior can be shaped and influenced, often without any kind of conscious awareness. Reinforcement is a core component of conditioning. So a woman is explaining how she meets your expectations, aka when she's qualifying herself to you, what she's actually doing is reinforcing to herself that she's trying to live up to your standards, which is an under the radar way of conditioning her to adopt the relationship dynamic that she's the one chasing you and not vice versa. But remember, it all starts with having standards other than looks. No matter how good a woman looks, treat her beauty like it's a prerequisite. Your attitude should be that her looks are enough to get her foot in the door, but she still needs to sell you with her personality and, more importantly, with her behavior. Even if you have to fake it a bit, put on your best poker face and do it. It's the only way that you'll ever stand a chance with a very attractive woman. As a great Vince Lombardi once said, the highest standards produce the highest quality. So if you want to attract a quality woman, you better have high standards. All right, so that's all the time we have for this week. But don't worry, I'm going to be back in less than a week, picking up right where we left off. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, there's no better time to do it than right now. That way, you'll be the first to know when that video drops. In the meantime, I do have something for you that's going to expand on what we just discussed and can really put your interactions with women on steroids. So it's a short assessment quiz, which you can find at girlsquiz.com, and I'm going to put a link to it in the description. Now, this quiz diagnoses the exact mistakes that you're making with women, and it's completely free. It takes less than 5 minutes to complete, so I recommend that every guy watching it take that quiz right now, because it's going to shine a spotlight on your blind spots, the mistakes that you're making with women that you're probably not even aware of. And again, you can find it by going to girlsquiz.com, or you can simply just click the link in the description. So once you get your results, I want to hear about it in the comments. I make sure to read and respond to every comment because it's a great way to keep the conversation going, while it also really helps the channel. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, because in the next video, I'm going to be picking up right where I left off in this video. Until then, I am Rob Judge, and I will see you next week.